If you grew up or are currently growing up in a household with siblings, then you most definitely had or have arguments and fights with them. It happens to almost everyone, and although these arguments can be as trivial as what's currently on the TV or whose turn it is to wash the dishes, by the end of the day you sweep it under the rug, ready for the next argument whenever that happens. But as we grow into adults, siblings for the most part become best friends, someone who we look to when we're in a time of need. Of course, this wouldn't apply to everyone who has siblings. I understand that not everyone has relationships with them, but for the ones who do, you know exactly what I mean. So what about brothers or sisters who, as they grow into adults, still have a rocky relationship with each other? Well, for this next story, one brother who seemed to have that exact relationship with his sibling would see himself end up in jail for his murder after the two clashed on one drunken night in June of 2021. After relocating to Yorkshire in the north of England for work reasons, 26-year-old William Campbell returned home to his mother's on the 16th of June 2021 in Silksworth, Sunderland, to catch up with the family and visit old friends. Sunderland, for anyone who doesn't know, is also in the north of England. We don't know too much of what happened within that day on the 16th, but we can assume as he hadn't seen his family for a while at this point, he had a good catch up with his mum and his younger brother, 24-year-old Samuel Campbell. But the brothers prior to this had a rocky relationship, and although on the 16th they might have not necessarily had a fallout, they certainly had done in the past. The argument stemming from William's frustration with Samuel not having a full-time job, relying on his mother too much at the age of 24, and Samuel's treatment of his own dog Marley. The thing was though, Samuel did work. He was a part-time barman and helped a friend's father in his removals business. So yeah, he had two part-time jobs, but again, William wasn't happy with the choices that his brother was making. In regards to Sam's dog Marley, William wasn't happy with him about that either. Again, in the past, they in fact had many arguments because Sam hadn't been walking him as often as he should, and again relied on his mother to take him out. William hadn't seen his brother in a while though, so again we can assume the pair had a great reunion on the 16th. And so on the 17th, Samuel had been waiting for William to get back from a night out of drinking with friends to have another catch up over some bourbon around the fire pit in the back garden. When he arrived, however, things didn't exactly turn out that way. Just after midnight, the pair's mother had been awoken to the sound of William stumbling into a bin as he was drunk. When she opened the door for him, he asked her where Sam was, and she told him he was in the garden burning some wood. She went on to tell him to hurry things along as Sam had been waiting hours for him to arrive back so they could have a drink. Sam and William's mother then returned to bed, but she was awoken once again around 30 minutes later to the sound of raised voices. According to the only witness testimony we have from William, he said that an argument started after Samuel had raised his voice at his dog. This was followed by a bicker and a head slap from Samuel. William then said he told Samuel to stop it or he'd get a knife, but Samuel didn't care, so he continued to push him. Sam then said, "Go and get a fucking knife then." At that point, William went inside. Samuel followed, pushed him by the neck, so they squared up to each other. And that's when the boy's mother came downstairs and broke it up. She told them to lower their voices and calm things down because she didn't want to disturb the neighbours. Again, this is at night. Witness testimony from the boy's mother then paints a picture of what happened next. When Sam and Marley went out into the garden after I had broken them up, William shook his head and said, "I was just telling him not to speak to Marley the way he was talking to him." He then got frustrated out of nowhere even though things had calmed down and said, "I'm not having this, I'm getting a knife." After wielding that knife, William walked up to his brother. There was a scuffle and within seconds, Sam took his hoodie off. In a surprise to his mother, as she didn't think nothing major had happened, Samuel, clear as day, had showed the blood starting to build up on his chest after he had just been stabbed by his own brother. The wound was 95mm deep and went through his heart. After noticing his injuries, Samuel shouted, "You stabbed us. Come on, come on," and then collapsed. William then shouted his mother over for help. He proceeded to say he passed out, but there was no response. In fact, William, fully knowing what he had just done, went on to say, "Get up, man, you fat bastard. I can't lift you. You've passed out," and had too much to drink. But when their mother ran over to see what had happened, she questioned why there was so much blood coming from his chest. To which William responded, believe it or not, "It's a bit of a flesh wound. It'll scab over." Instantly, she realised what had happened, so she got on the phone to emergency services, but sadly, she couldn't get through to no one for quite some time. But she did eventually get through, and that's when police and paramedics would eventually turn up to the scene.
What's your name?
William James Campbell.
William. Right, sit down.
I'm sorry.
So what's happened?
I stabbed him out of rage.
553188.
No,
Right.
I'm sorry.
William, at the minute you're under arrest
I know.
on suspicion of a Section 18 assault. You do not have to say anything.
What does that
But may
entail?
harm in defence, we do not mention when questioned, so
What
we
does
shall
that
later lie in
entail?
court. Anything you do say may be given
No, I
evidence.
understand the protocol. What does that entail?
What do you mean?
Like, what do I have to do?
Right, you're obviously under arrest.
Yes.
Main priority at the minute is getting your brother seen to. What's your brother called?
Samuel Robert Daniel Campbell.
And what's your name?
William James.
William. You're under arrest on suspicion of an assault on him at the time being, because we don't know what's going to... Well, obviously he's getting some first aid, okay?
I've got another car coming on station.
What was it?
The boy's mother did everything she could to keep Samuel alive, performing CPR as the emergency operator asked her to, but despite her best efforts and a drastic surgical intervention by a doctor, Samuel would go on to die as a result from his injury. When police arrived at the scene, as you've just witnessed, William said that he stabbed his younger brother in a drunken rage, adding that they had a fight and it got out of hand. He shouldn't have stabbed him. But once he sobered up, he changed his story, saying in a nutshell that after Samuel had been bouncing around like a boxer as they were fighting, he walked up to William and fell onto the knife, even though the knife had broke his chest bone. Eventually, William was charged with his brother's murder, and after denying the charges brought against him, he recently went on trial. In court, he gave that defence. His brother had fell onto the blade, but the prosecution had none of it. The body cam footage was clear as day. He admitted that he stabbed him in a fit of rage, and the prosecution did accept that William was more than likely genuinely remorseful for his actions, but his defence was merely there to help him get off the murder charge. The jury agreed with the prosecution in that William had lied, and so after the trial he was found guilty of his own brother's murder. But William hasn't been sentenced just yet, and is due to be sentenced on the 5th of January, where he's expected to serve a life sentence, but as of yet we don't know the minimum term. And so if it's one thing about alcohol, it most definitely leads to situations like this. Personally, this isn't the first time I've seen something like this. Because with a sober mind, although things might get a little bit tense, I doubt very much that you would pull a knife out and go on to stab your brother. But you add alcohol in the mix and you probably will go on to stab someone because your mind is impaired and you're not really thinking straight. William more than likely was remorseful, but to go and say that Samuel had fell on the blade, you can see why the jury gave him the guilty verdict. For now though, give the video a like for more crime related content like this, and make sure you hit the subscribe button if you haven't. It's been me, Ape Huncho, and I'll see you in the next one.